So moving on, I'd like to now introduce you to our moderator for the day. Christopher Como is a New Brunswick-born Acadian with over 30 years' experience in strategic planning, collaborative solutions, complex problem solving, facilitation, and international marketing. He has spearheaded mission-critical operations and functioned at all levels of management in both the public and private sectors, and he's also a certified professional facilitator. I would like to thank you again all for coming today, and I'm going to now leave you in Christopher Como's hands. Thank you.
Good morning. Bonjour. Bienvenue à tout le monde. It's my pleasure to be here today at the Canadian Internet Forum and to join you throughout the day and to act as your moderator so that we can use time as effectively as possible to get as much of the opinions that you have in your minds right now over to the folks at CIRA and amongst yourselves so that this truly is a forum at the end of the day and we walk out of here having mutually informed each other in a number of multiple dimensions. Ça me fait un grand plaisir d'être parmi vous aujourd'hui. Et je voudrais juste annoncer qu'on a fait disponible la traduction simultanée. Alors, si vous voulez des écouteurs, il y a simplement à vous présenter à la table à l'arrière et ils vont vous être fournis pour la journée. We do have simultaneous translation, so if you would like to hear the precision of some of the French questions or comments that are coming out, you as well can pick up translation headphones from the table that you'll see at the back of the room. With us this morning is a panel of Canadian experts on various areas of internet development and policy. And each of these panels brings a unique focus on their particular area of expertise. Each of them and collectively contribute today to the theme on Canadian vision and leadership. And I think personally that each of our panelists really personifies this vision. We'll hear from each panelist for about 10 minutes. And then at the end of that, we're going to give them a question, and we're going to have them debate a little bit on where they see some aspects of the future of the internet. And then we're going to open the floor, as we're going to do throughout the day, to you to hear your comments and potential questions for any of our panelists. On the panel this morning, we'll hear from Jacob Glick, Canada Policy Counsel for Google, from Jim Roche, President and CEO of Canary, Marc Blanchet, Président de Viagenie, and Dr. Jerry Sinclair. First, we'll hear from Jacob Glick. Jacob Glick is part of a global policy team working with academics, civil society, industry, and government to keep the internet awesome. He regularly writes and presents blogs, tweets, and tweets on issues related to privacy, intellectual property, telecommunication and broadcasting regulation, online advertising, and innovation policy, and obviously he's ambidextrous and can type with both hands. Jacob studied political science and law at the University of Toronto. Prior to joining Google, he was general counsel and director of policy development at the Canadian Internet Registration Authority. And Jacob enjoys Mel Brooks movies, biking along the Ottawa River Parkway. And I believe he firmly avows that if only he could throw, run, catch, and hit just a little bit better, he would have been the relief pitcher for the Blue Jays. I'm going to ask Jacob and all of our four panelists if you'd all come up now, and Jacob will take the podium.
So first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to participate to the CIRA folks. It's a real homecoming for me, having moved to Ottawa to work for CIRA and having spent 2 fun years working on some of these internet governance issues, both domestically and internationally. And now getting to continue to work on many of those issues while at Google. And I hope not to take too much time because I want to leave lots of time for our discussion and to hang out on the couch. Looks very cuddly. I only want to make one point. So if you only get anything out of my presentation today, it's very simple. Everything is converging to the public internet. And all of the policy and regulatory and legal disputes we're seeing in public discourse today are lenses through which to view that single transformation. So that's it. I'm basically done. But for those of you with patience beyond 2 sentences, I'll elaborate a little bit. This, by the way, is a talk I've given a bunch of times called The Unified Theory of Everything. I'm condensing it for these purposes, but I'm happy to go into more detail with any of you at a later date. The basic idea is this. The previous world of communications technology was a world of stovepipes, so a stovepipe, a single, up and down, where a single network was owned by more or less a single company providing a single application. So the phone company owned the phone system and gave you phones. The cable company owned the cable network and gave you cable TV. And this kind of business arrangement was necessitated by the not necessitated by the technology, but it was a function of the technology, and it led to presuppositions in how our regulatory schemes would be organized. It had, of course, a number of downsides, not least of which is the limited capacity offered by the technology. So in the context of television, for example, there's a finite number of channels you can pack into broadcast television. Even a finite number of channels you can pack onto cable. I know what you're thinking. Seems like infinite cable, but it's not. It's 500 channels is still finite. And there's a finite number of hours in the day for them to fill. So inevitably, because of scarcity, we're in a world of limited choices and fewer voices. Likewise, in the context of telephony, when the network was fully operated by only one provider, they had control over who could connect what to the network and when. So it was only in the 70s and 80s, for example, that answering machines in Canada and the US were permitted to be used by the phone companies. A lot of this, by the way, I'm glossing over the history of a very complex set of regulatory schemes, and I commend to you The Master Switch by Tim Wu, which I would say I read it over Christmas, but I listened to it on my Android phone. That's a product placement ad, by the way. That's what I always say. I say, don't work on commission, but click on the ads. And even today, many of these still pervade the way we experience communications networks. If you think about your own life, how many of you who have digital cable have a PVR from somebody other than your cable company? So crickets, right? Tumbleweed. Probably none of you do. So fast forward to the transformation made possible by the internet, and what a colleague of mine, Rick Witt, refers to as the virtuous hourglass, where all of these stovepipes, previously existing single-purpose networks, and the single applications carried on them are squeezed, and everything converges, my hands were in the way of the mic, converges to the internet. So all of a sudden, telephony, audiovisual content, data, they're all just applications that are carried on the internet with any number of competitive providers for those different kinds of applications. And all of the networks, so this is the bottom of the hourglass, all of the single-purpose networks merely become delivery vehicles for the internet. So the phone system becomes DSL, cable becomes DOCSIS, mobile phones become HSPA+. Telephony people in the room will correct me on Twitter if I get any of the acronyms wrong. This, by the way, so this transformation is a giant high five for Canadians and consumers. First of all, it leads to the democratization of content. Because of the effective unlimited shelf space available on the internet, because the cost of storage is effectively zero. Not exactly zero, but it's kind of as x approaches zero, for those of you who did grade 12 calculus. So because of the unlimited storage, you have effectively unlimited shelf space. So you can have all sorts of wide variety of content that would never be available in a world of finite time and channels. So thus, 35 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube every minute, globally. That is what we call a lot. And if you care about Canadian content, there's more Canadian content on YouTube, first of all, than any individual could watch in a lifetime, or than all of the broadcast networks air combined. if all they did was air Canadian content. So an incredible amount of content is available, a true democratization of voices, and you see that every day in your own experience, where you see videos that would, and voices, and hear people and languages that would never make it onto traditional content delivery systems that we have in our society. Likewise, it allows for incredible competition, and in the interest of time, I'm not going to delve into all of these in depth, but again, I'm happy to talk about them with you individually. Incredible competition, choice, and innovation, all of which make for tremendous opportunities for Canadians to compete in the global economy and for Canadian business to succeed not just locally, regionally, but internationally. Of course, the virtuous hourglass and the convergence of everything to the public internet creates tremendous regulatory flux because our existing regulatory systems, and this is where we get back to what I started with, presuppose a different set of technological arrangements. So if you think about the creaky old Broadcasting Act, when you try to apply that to the internet, you start to get sometimes, potentially, some very bad outcomes. And we can talk about that a little bit more. So the key thing, again, for government and policymakers to consider, when they're asked by stakeholders to solve, and I use air quotes for that, problems, I use air quotes again, the things that aren't actually problems for Canadians, for competition, for innovation, but are problems for a subset of existing stakeholders. When asked to solve those problems, they really need to ask themselves, what's in the best interest of Canadians, of choice, of innovation? And I'll submit to you that the open internet is the best answer for all of those things. And preserving the open internet and the choice and the innovation that has made all of that possible is the key task for regulators and decision makers in Canada today. And so it's something that I would commend to you, and in particular because this discourse in the public policy arena where I'm engaged, and I say this coming from the perspective of someone who represents a corporation here in Ottawa, is deeply corporate, as well as another set of entrenched institutional stakeholders, but not deeply personal and Canadian. So I would encourage individual Canadians to get involved in this debate, as they have through the UBB debate and other debates, the copyright debate. I would encourage Canadians to get involved in internet policy in a deep and sustained manner. And I look forward to our discussion. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks very much, Jacob. Now we'll hear from Jim Roche. Jim is the president and CEO of CANARIE. He is a successful entrepreneur with over 25 years of leadership experience, having been a founding member and general manager at Newbridge Networks Corporation, who are now obviously Alcatel-Lucent, and co-founder and CEO of Tundra Semiconductor, now IDT. Yeah, I guess you only work at places who change their names. Okay. Profitably, hopefully. The CEO of CMC Microsystems and the founder and CEO of Stratford Managers, a company he continues to lead. In addition to his corporate duties, he also serves on numerous boards and committees, including the ICT Advisory Board for DFATE, the Committee of Research Partnerships for NSERC, and the Expert Panel on Business Innovation for CCA, and others, and I won't go over all the acronyms. He is also an executive in residence at the Telfer School of Management here at the University of Ottawa, and frequently is called on to speak about entrepreneurship, commercialization of innovation, and strategy development. Jim holds a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering from Queen's University, and he's added to his management skills through intensive programs at Stanford, Ivy, Queen's, and elsewhere. Thank you for joining us today, Jim.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. So, yeah, I like cycling down the canal, too. That sounded kind of flat compared to yours, Jacob. I got to rewrite that. Anyway, I'm here representing CANARIE, and I want to take the 10 minutes that's been allotted to give you an overview of CANARIE, because I find I've been at CANARIE for a year now, and I find in talking to people, I often get the question, well, what is CANARIE anyway, and what do you do, and what's your relationship with the internet, the public internet? So CANARIE actually has three key objectives as an organization. It's been around since 1993, and it pursues these three objectives. First one, and the most important one, is to provide digital infrastructure for research and education in Canada. And that's in direct support of the digital economy strategy, the very first priority area that Marta talked about. The second objective is to provide support for the ICT, the Information and Communications Technology industry in Canada. And the third objective is to provide leadership for next generation ICT technologies, many of which we deploy in our network. So that's what we're here to do. That's what Canary is doing. So how do we do that? What are we? Well, Canary is actually a network, principally. And I'll just give you some facts about that network. It is about 19,000 kilometers of fiber across Canada. As I said, it's been deployed over the last 18 years or so, and it currently connects up about 40,000 researchers in Canadian universities and colleges and hospitals and government labs. It also connects to about 100 other different countries, allowing our researchers to do their research in collaboration with their international colleagues. To give you a sense of the capacity of this network, it's about 100 gigabits per second capacity in the backbone of the network. And the network itself is deployed in partnership with provincial network managers. We call them ORANs, not that that really matters, but there are 12 provincial partners that we work with to extend the network down onto the campuses and directly to the researchers' desktops. We also partner closely, as you can imagine, with other international research and education organizations like Canary. If you're familiar with Internet 2 in the US, it's an equivalent organization to Canary. It provides the same kind of service to researchers in the United States. We also partner very closely with organizations here in Canada that also provide part of the digital infrastructure, organizations like Compute Canada, Cuccio, and we work closely with CRC, the Communications Research Council, just over here at Shirley's Bay, NRC, NSERC, and a whole bunch of other acronymed organizations to deliver this service that I'm describing. We are funded by Industry Canada, so thank you very much. We get funding in 5-year chunks through a mandate period. In the last mandate period, the one we're in right now, the organization received $120 million. So we're operating on a budget of around $25 million a year to deploy and manage the network. We also receive funding from some other sources, but the principal funder is Industry Canada. Well, we don't just provide the network, we also provide services for the network. So as an example, we've spent quite a bit of money in support of green IT initiatives over the last few years. This would be an example of deploying new technologies to try to, in the research and education network, with a view to having them migrate from that network into the core internet, into the bulk internet. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, well, why do we need this research and education network? Why do we need a separate network? I mean, everything is converging to the internet. I agree with that. Everything is converging to the internet. But, so why do we need this separate R&E network? Well, the reason is it's all about bandwidth. The researchers that we're supporting more and more are sharing poop loads of data. That's a technical term. More than the traditional and our existing internet can carry. So I'll give you an example. If you look at what CERN is doing, in high energy particle physics, when they turn on that experiment, it transmits data around the world. If it were being conveyed to the researchers on the standard internet, on the public internet, it would bring the internet down. It wouldn't be able to carry the data, for one thing, and if it did try to do that, all of your downloads would stop, and they would stop for quite a long time. So we need to have a separate network to carry this data because it's so much larger than what the bulk internet can. I'm stumbling over my words, but hopefully I'm getting my point across. What we can do on the standard internet. And what's happening is that these researchers in health research and high energy particle physics and social sciences research, more and more are relying on a different form of research. If you go back in time, the traditional researcher would be working by him or herself in a lab, maybe with colleagues in a particular university. That model actually was predominant even 40 years ago. If you go back 20 years ago, we had higher degrees of collaboration. We had more people working together, often in multiple institutions, trying to share data. And the data was typically shared by the traditional method, mailing tapes or carrying tapes in visits. Now, more and more researchers are sharing reams of data amongst a collaborative team that typically spans multiple countries, obviously multiple institutions. So we need this infrastructure to support that research. One of the questions that we want to address on the panel are what are some of the burning issues that we're dealing with? Well, in this space, in the research and education space, I'll tell you one of the burning issues is that this digital infrastructure, which I'm talking about, both the networking component as well as the compute component, because while I've described the need for networking, the same need exists for high-performance computing. This digital infrastructure is becoming increasingly important, but it's being taken for granted by the research community, and it isn't being separately funded as a separate initiative by our country. And this is in contrast to what's happening in other countries. This is a burning issue. If we don't fund this kind of digital infrastructure, then we run the risk that the research community will fall behind compared to other countries. And I'm not just talking about ICT research. I'm talking about healthcare research. I'm talking about social sciences research, every kind of research that's carried out that uses the digital infrastructure. The second burning issue, and one that concerns us, me in particular, gravely, is the ICT industry in Canada. The fourth area of the digital economy strategy that Marta talked about is to support the ICT industry. Now, I want to share with you some facts about the ICT industry. Every time I read these, it shocks me. I can't believe they're true. But here's one of them. Canada's ICT sector, as a percentage of our gross domestic product, is below the OECD average. It's below the OECD. You think that Canada is a leader in ICT. Well, no, actually, we're below the OECD average. And in fact, we recently dropped from 12th position to 14th position out of 23 countries. And every indicator shows that we're likely going to continue to drop. In 2007, another fact, in 2007, Canada's ICT sector R&D intensity, which is R&D, research and development, divided by revenue, it's a simple ratio, was 5.4%. This compared to 7.4% for the US. As you can imagine, this undermines our innovation capacity in ICT. And as we heard Marta say, ICT as an industry, although it only represents roughly 5% of our GDP, it's foundational and fundamental to every other industry in Canada, including our resource industries, which of course are the key drivers for our economy. Another fact, the decline in venture capital investments in 2010 to the lowest level in 14 years. Now, VC funds the startups that lead to the bigger companies like RIM, like what was Nortel. If we see a decline in VC investments, what you know is happening is the seed stock for our future ICT behemoths is being, well, it's not being nurtured. Anyway, I could go on. The statistics are appalling. I'm very, very pleased to see the focus that we're putting on the digital economy strategy in Canada and some of the other initiatives that we're taking because we're beginning to address this. And I think that's an excellent thing. But it is, in my mind, a burning issue. One of the things that Canary has done recently, it's a drop in the bucket, but it is an attempt to support the ICT industry, is we've created this environment. We're in the process of creating this environment. It's a test bed to allow startups and small or medium-sized ICT companies to test out their products on our network, the Research and Education Network, before deploying it broadly to the public. This will give them, we hope, a competitive advantage in Canada. The last thing that I want to say is a burning issue is ICT research in Canada. Apart from our ICT industry, which I was talking about a minute ago, ICT research in Canada is also showing signs of slipping. We're not seeing as many researchers focusing on this area in Canada as compared to other countries. And I think that's something we need to address if we want to maintain a strength in this space. Thanks very much.
With us today as well is Marc Blanchet. Marc is president of Viagenie, a consulting and R&D firm in advanced IP networking with a focus on IPv6, VoIP, internationalization, DNS, and space networking. Sounds cool. Marc has been involved in internet protocols engineering for over 20 years, and as such has chaired many IETF working groups, such as the Internationalized Domain Names Working Group. He has co-founded the IPv6 Forum and is the vice chair of the Canadian chapter of that forum. He was the co-chair of the Canadian Joint Industry Government ISACC Committee on IPv6 Deployment in Canada, and he is also chair of the Space Agency's Data Standards Working Group for Space Protocol Registries. Monsieur Blanchet and his colleagues at Viagenie have been helping worldwide providers, enterprises, vendors, and governments on deployments of advanced networking technologies such as, again, IPv6, DNS, VoIP, and space networking. His team has helped CIRA. In fact, his team was instrumental in helping CIRA with the setup of the DNS infrastructure when CIRA was first started 10 years ago. He's also authored the Migrating to IPv6 book published by Wiley, that's a good plug, and co-authored the Cisco IPv6 course. He has a master's degree in electrical engineering from Laval University. Bienvenue, Marc.
Bonjour, good morning. I guess I'm probably wearing the technical hat in the panel. So I'll do just a bit of technical things, but not too much so that, you know, you're not going to leave the room. So I read the documents of the CIF consultations and the summaries and everything. And I would like to share you a few statements that I've seen and, you know, read. For example, people were saying we need to achieve universal and affordable access to world-class internet infrastructure and services, promoting internet-enabled innovation in business, government, and everything, equal access to Canadians, for all Canadians, maintaining an open internet, securing privacy, and maintain and promote our culture. So I'll take those, this is like you know, some of the comments. So I'll take those and try to map them into technology, what that means. So I see I group them into three classes. One is the universal, equal, world-class open access to the internet. Obviously, there's a lot of policies in just this statement. I'll put my phone here so I get timing. But there's also some key underlying technology that is needed for that universal, equal, world-class open access and growth of the internet. And it's called IPv6, and it's something that people have already heard a few times today. We have security and privacy. Again, a lot in the policies also in this regard. But there's also a key underlying technology, or many actually underlying technologies, one of which I will talk is called DNSSEC. Third is maintaining and promoting culture. Again, a lot of policies there, but I'll talk about one key underlying technology, and this is the internationalized domain names. Hopefully, you'll go through with me and get a good understanding. So the current internet runs, so the first topic, universal, equal, world-class, open access, innovative internet. The current internet runs over the internet protocol, and it's called IPv4. It's version 4, but in fact, it's the first version. That technology is 35 years old. Think about it. How many computing technologies that are 35 years old that you are still using, right? How many are actually not only used, but have a sustained growth of about 100% each year? How many of them? Think about it. How many are we still using that are 35 years old when they were invented? Okay, So IPv4 uses IP addresses to number computers, and that's how they connect together. It's like telephone numbers. Well, that 35 years old technology has no more IP addresses or no more telephone numbers available. It's all exhausted. It is happening this year and the next year, so it's like done. So what that means, that consequence is the fact that it will be much more difficult to grow the internet, as we know. And there will be, as we grow, different classes of access. So back to what you were saying about universal, equal, world-class open access, if we keep as we go, we'll not have the universal, equal, world-class open access innovative internet. We'll have kind of a clumsy, with clouds, separate clouds, private, not connecting to each other, not universal in any ways. So the solution is the new protocol. So the ITF, the Engineering Task Force, created a new protocol called IPv6, which has a very, very large address space for the purpose of the growth. So we need to deploy it. If we don't, then we won't have universal, equal, world-class open access, and we will have much less innovation because we will be limited with the 35 years old technology, which is a fantastic success. So, and that is also important for remaining world-class and world leaders. Moreover, the internet is not stopping growing, right? We're connecting more and more. In the CIF documents and summaries, people were discussing about smart grids, energy grids, Internet of Things, connecting everything. Well, if we continue to grow, we need that technology. What do we do for deploying this? I'm sorry. We need to put IPv6 everywhere. In the phones, in the laptops, in the applications, in the routers, in the networks, in the firewalls, in the servers, everywhere. Long road. So you better start sooner than later. The good part is there's a lot already done. Normal, recent operating systems are IPv6 capable. Typical browsers, mail, and clients are IPv6 capable. Many providers are IPv6 ready. So we're getting there. On the Canadian side, we're not that good. Our providers, good or bad, are a bit behind. They're not that far behind, but we're not in the front. I know because we're helping many of them, they are working on it, but we could improve that situation. CIRA, the host of this meeting, has already made the important steps for their role in this ecosystem. More work is underway, but there's a good check mark. Industry and content providers are roughly, I'm talking about the Canadian side of it, roughly behind. We need to move. We had a joint industry government committee last year that issued a report in March last year with recommendations to the industry and government and providers and every stakeholders. We need to move. A little plug to my, you didn't know in advance, but actually Google is a very good citizen for the IPv6 thing because all Google services are available on IPv6, and that's thanks to Lorenzo Coletti and Eric Klein from Google. End of the plug. Other are moving, but in the IPv6 industry, Google is really seen as the one who helped that move. And others are moving. Facebook is IPv6 enabled, Yahoo is coming, CNN, a lot of people. I don't know about our broadcasting corporations, but I think we're not yet there. Message. There's a worldwide initiative coordinated by Internet Society, and we have an Internet Society speaker later today, to enable IPv6 on many sites. That's called the World IPv6 Day, June 8, 2011. Make sure that your organization is ready and participating in this day, because that's how we would be moving. And it would be really bad if the Canadian industry is behind, because, again, universal, equal, open access, world-class, innovative internet will have to go through the new protocol, because the old one is kind of no more space. So my question to the people here, are we deploying IPv6 to have a universal, equal, world-class, open, and innovative internet in Canada? Second topic, security and privacy. There's many facets of this. The one that has a technology component is DNSSEC, and it's for securing the DNS. And so the current DNS doesn't have any protection when you try to connect to a website with a domain name. There's no protection on the DNS side of it. And DNSSEC is a way to protect that transaction. And I'm not talking about the actual data that's flowing. It's actually how you map the domain name to the server you're connecting to. So I know CIRA is working on it, but there are many other stakeholders involved in DNSSEC. Please deploy to get the better secure Internet. Finalement, on doit maintenir notre culture. Il y a plusieurs facettes à cette problématique. Une, c'est les noms de domaine internationalisés. Et les noms de domaine internationalisés permettent l'utilisation de langues telles que le français, les langues asiatiques et arabes. Et les noms de domaine internationalisés doivent être déployés pour permettre l'internalisation complète et l'utilisation de l'Internet dans toutes les langues. Summary, for those who didn't get it, we need to have support any language in Internet, including domain names. Final remarks. So you said in the discussions, the workshops, that you want a universal, equal, open, innovative, secure, multicultural Internet. I'm here to tell you that there's a few things on the underlying technologies that we need to do. IPv6, DNSSEC, and internationalized domain name. I hope that this small contribution to the discussion will help in the debate today and make you aware that even there are some policies involved in those considerations, there is also technology, and this has to be deployed because we will be behind, and that's bad for Canada. Thank you very much.
Merci bien, Mac. Finally, bringing it home for the panel today is Dr. Jerry Sinclair. Dr. Sinclair has more than 20 years' experience spanning the fields of internet and new media technology, entrepreneurial business, academic research, and government policy. Dr. Sinclair is the former executive director of the Masters of Digital Media program and CEO of the Center for Digital Media, a high-tech facility that houses the MDM program at Great Northern Way Campus, or GNWC. In 2006, GNWC received a $40.5 million government grant from the BC government to establish a world-leading graduate degree program in the field of digital media. Prior to joining MDM and GNWC, Dr. Sinclair was the chair of the Telecom Policy Review, advising the federal government of Canada on the policy and regulatory environment required to support an advanced telecommunications network. She was formerly the general manager of MSN Canada, as well as the founder and CEO of Encompass Labs, an internet web content management company, and spun out of Simon Fraser University in 1996 and thereafter acquired by Microsoft in 2001. That was a nice track record. A former IBM consulting scholar, as well as a visiting scientist at IBM Research in New York, Dr. Sinclair was also the president of the British Columbia government's Premier Technology Council and the founding director of the Excite Lab at Simon Fraser University, which was the first new media technology R&D center in Canada. She has served on several government and corporate boards, including TELUS Corporation and BC Telecom, as well as Canada's Information Highway Advisory Council and the National Broadband Task Force. She is currently a director of the Toronto Stock Exchange, Ballard Power, Canadian Foundation for Innovation, Canadian Communications Research Council, and Genome BC, and has unlimited amounts of spare time, apparently. She recently was appointed to the Social Services and Humanities Research Council of Canada, SSHRC. This, you gotta believe this one. Dr. Sinclair is the recipient of numerous awards, but holds a PhD in Renaissance drama, as well as an Honor of Doctor of Science in the Computing Science from the University of British Columbia. Thank you for being with us, Dr. Sinclair. Looking forward to your remarks.
Hi, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to be here. I had the opportunity on Wednesday this week to address the Conference Board of Canada on a topic that was called National Security and Digital Literacy. I prepared, I think, 220 slides for that. It was 2 hours long. And I've condensed my slides down to 40 for you folks, which, of course, is going to be too long as well. So I'm trying to figure out if I should talk as fast as I can, and I can really talk fast and blow through all of them, or just flip around and see where we go. And I think I'm going to take the last one, the last option. But one of the things I wanted to start off with is I'm quite excited about the fact that our twittering, our tweets are being broadcast or at least projected up here on the wall. And but it kind of crystallizes for me one of the major points I'm going to be making in my presentation, and that is we're watching the tweets. A lot of us are surfing the internet. A lot of us are looking at our Blackberries and our email that's coming in. Some of us are texting, and most of us are listening to the speakers. And my very good friend Linda Stone, who was an executive vice president at Microsoft a few years ago and is now a member of the Digerati team who writes in a number of places, she refers to the syndrome as continuous partial attention, CPA, which means that we kind of have one foot in the physical world and several of our other appendages, eyes and arms and legs, in the online space. And here in this audience, we have, our attention is being split in many, many different ways. So, just as in terms of polling the audience, how many people think this is a good thing to have continuous partial attention at all, at all times? How many people think this is a great thing, a good thing? How many people think that our quality of life and our attention are being undermined as a result of splitting our attention? Aha, so that is my point, the point right here, balancing the opportunity, balancing the good and the bad. I guess the subtitle for this talk could be "The Kids Are All Right, eh?" And we'll go on to that. Okay, so we've heard from the other panelists about the driving forces that are determining what's going on the internet, and I kind of boil them down to two, and then maybe perhaps four major points. One is Moore's law. Everything is exponentially growing. It's not only the number of transistors on an IC circuit, but it happens to be bandwidth, and it happens to be the cost is going down, the processing power is going up, the storage is increasing, everything is growing. And on top of that, we have the network effect, which says that the more nodes on a network, the more valuable the network is. So if you've got a telephone network with only 2 telephones on it, you can only talk to one other person, but the fact that we now have 2 billion people connected on the internet means that as Jacob was saying, unlimited choices, unlimited voices, which means that there are many, many people we can connect with, which means that basically the connectivity and interactivity, those two things are really important, of the internet is exposing us to more ideas, people, resources, relationships than ever before, and those are growing exponentially as well. And so that has both good and bad points. The good, obviously, is, you know, in terms of using all of the social media sites and search and all of the tools that are available. The knowledge transfer and innovation are also growing exponentially. I mean, if you've got over 1 million people following you on Twitter and you have something of importance to say, getting that information out there is rapid, it's instant. And so the innovation part of our lives is really, really increasing our access to knowledge, ideas, people, new kinds of knowledge, and it can be distributed, remixed, mashed up, added up, and it's, you know, it's fabulous. But there's, of course, a dark side to all of this as well. I don't have any bad women on this slide. Maybe I should, but you know, I mean, the bad news is pretty obvious. More and more individuals, organizations, and the bad guys are out there, and they also have access to our ideas and to our resources and our relationships, and they're up to not necessarily, they're pretty innovative, but not necessarily you know, positive life-enhancing things. So the two other most significant drivers, I think, are the fact that online advertising has turned out to be the basic or the leading model of monetization on the internet, and that data analytics have been major breakthroughs in the way we can crunch numbers, and we can build network algorithms, and we can actually make predictive models, and we can mine all this data to find out what people are doing when they're on the internet. So advertising, as I said, is a multi-billion-dollar business, and it's at the heart of the core business of all of the, you know, the big media companies, you know, Google and Twitter and Facebook, LinkedIn. I put dictionary.com there because when you go onto dictionary.com, 234 trackers are dropped on you. And that's what I'm going to talk about in terms of the customer value proposition. Is you get a great experience, you get good tools, you get connectivity, connection with your friends, you get information, but you're paying for that in micropayments of personal data. And that's kind of the handshake that we're making with these companies. Their business models are generally giving it away for free, but we pay with data. And so I talked about data analytics, and we all know about the volume of data doubling, and you know, the breakthrough in terms of data analytics and the ability for companies to track and build models and predict behaviors and understand, you know, follow you on the internet. Generally, the answer to those of us who would say, but this is an invasion of privacy, the answer is, but no, this is really for a better customer experience. If we know more about you, we can personalize the experience, we can customize the experience, and it's not only just in terms of advertising that this data analytics is going on. Employees are being monitored. We're being monitored by our government so that we can have safer streets and better cities, and so monitoring is going on, you know, all around us. Come on, baby. Stuck? Okay, well, let's throw that away. Oh, there it is. Okay, so sorry, Jacob. So the question really is, what do Facebook, Google, and your ISP know about you? And I've been doing a lot of work with Telefonica in Spain in their department of customer insight. That's, you know, sort of the polite term for data tracking. And it's quite amazing how much ISPs really know about us. I mean, they have had access through billing. They have a personal billing relationship with us that goes back to the point where bills came about. So by looking at these bills, not only our address, our name, and neighborhood, and all that kind of stuff, but also you know, who we've been calling from long distance for a long time. And when you add the mobile experience on top of that, then they know where we work, the route we take to work, with mobile commerce, what we're buying all along the way, and so this. I used to think that the telcos were in a tremendous had a tremendous advantage from a business perspective, because they could use this data in ways that would make people more, you know, better customer experience. But then, you know, and we used to say, well, Facebook and Google, they don't know where you live. Well, they do, actually. And they know all kinds of things about us. And you think about Google, maybe we'll get into this in a minute, but in terms of all of the services that Google provides, from mail to finance to maps to, and you just name them, all of those things allow trackers and advertisers and companies who are basically building the dossiers on all of us a very profound insight into who we are and what we like and what we do. And then when you talk about Facebook, committed to this thing called radical transparency, which means exposing the social graph, of mapping the social graph of all of our relationships and making it visible. And you watch Facebook and how they operate. They push the envelope on privacy, people react, and then they pull back. So they kind of push forward and then ask for forgiveness. It's a very interesting thing. As you can see, I've got so many things to talk about and I don't have any time. So the point is that around us we've got online surveillance, profiling, exposure. It's all there. And if you choose to be online, I mean, basically this is my message. You can run, but you can't hide. Unless you pull the plug. And if you pull the plug, then we've already talked about how you basically lose the opportunities and the tremendous opportunities there are for being online. I've been working with those great, very smart folks at the Media Awareness Network. Over the past year, we put together a response to the digital economy consultation document last June. And basically, as Morgan mentioned, one of the pillars of that consultation document is Canada needs a digital literacy policy, or a very digitally literate workforce, as well as life skills, digital life skills for everyone from cradle to grave. So the beginning hypothesis of the white paper that we wrote, which you can find on the MNet website or else the Industry Canada website, is that digital literacy is an essential component, and it's not just about kids in schools, although I personally think that the digital economy strategy should have had more emphasis on children and education. But it's also about vocational training and the workforce. It's also about public awareness, and it's also continued lifelong learning. We can't stop. Everything is changing. And why is it important? Well, the obvious reasons, and we've covered most of them this morning. I mean, there's obvious economic value with a strong ICT sector is a backbone of the country, but digital life skills are very important for people in terms of their own economic prosperity. There's obvious cultural value that a digitally literate citizenry both reads and participates more in the cultural backbone, but also can create more cultural product. There's political value in terms of citizen engagement, and there's also individual and national security implications to digital literacy. So what is it? It's not just one skill, it's a whole set of skills, a whole set of e-literacies that range from basic skills to more sophisticated skills. And generally people talk about the three verbs of digital literacy being access, to use, and understand. I've added two more. Actually, three more, which I'll talk about. The last one is an even more interesting one. But to access, use, understand, communicate, and create with digital technologies. The access one is, basically it's the basic one, and it means that you have access to a computer, and you can connect it to the internet. And Canada's done pretty well in terms of the access, its access success. Approximately 95% of our households have access to the internet. But the downside is that only approximately 70+% are actually using it. So the question is, what's going on? Why is almost 30% of our population, our households, not using the internet? And there are many different answers. A number of them have to do with socioeconomic factors, in terms of affordability. But there's also things like, people don't see the value, or if they or if they do, they don't have the skills to use it. So digital skills are really important there. In terms of using, this one is really the kind of the cornerstone. It's not only how to operate hardware and software, but it's how to use search and how to use databases and understand how all of these things all fit together, and mobile apps. So, you know, and this is your digital life skill, your basic competency. But it goes beyond that, because I think this is probably the most important. It's understanding. It's really building a critical awareness of the fact that we're being tracked, for instance, what I was talking about earlier, about the fact that there's malware, there's phishing schemes, there are all kinds of risks associated with being online that we need to know about, and you know, it's about developing your spidey sense when to click that link and when to trash it immediately. Those kinds of things, we need to protect ourselves, but we also need to understand how to take advantage of the opportunities. And I've talked about that already. The communicate one is very important too. The internet connects us all, and there are many different kinds of forms of communication, and they range from email to blogs to tweets to photo sharing as a kind of communication. And it's really, really important, just as we've been teaching reading and writing to kids, to also, instead of teaching business letters and friendly letters, to talk about the appropriate use of the 140 characters in a tweet. I mean, that is a format that we need to know about. What about a blog? When, you know, email, the understanding how to communicate with email is a whole art unto itself. And create. You know, rather than being passive consumers of content, an innovative, vibrant citizenry is also a creative citizenry. And you know, if you remember the opening line of the Social Network, where the Mark Zuckerberg character says, "Do you know that there are more people in China with a genius IQ than there are people in the United States?" And the whole point is if we are going to be competing, if we're going to be competing with the India and China that have more honor students than we have students in Canada and the United States together, then innovation and creativity is the place that we can really score. This is my own favorite bugaboo. Digital literacy's programming. So if I were the queen of the universe, I would start teaching programming at kindergarten. The whole point is I think that there's a basic digital literacy required in understanding how computer code works. And it goes back to, do we really want to be the passive victims of the cultural, social, political, and economic biases that are built into computer code, or do we want to understand what's going on? And so from that perspective, it seems to me that Douglas Rushkoff, who's written a book called Program or Be Programmed, is right on, and I could give you a talk about this that would go on, but I've got to hurry up. Okay, now, in terms of implementation, you'll see that it's a multi-jurisdictional challenge in terms of implementation. We have the education side in terms of making sure digital literacy is a fundamental piece of the curriculum from kindergarten to grade 12 and then on to post-secondary. The job training side, which we've talked about. Government has a tremendous role, as acknowledged in the digital economy consultation, and communities need to be involved as well. Now, Canada's major trading partners are well under their way to launching and implementing multi-billion-dollar programs in digital literacy that cut across all of these sectors. But where is Canada? Well, the consultation paper was called Canada's Digital Advantage, but I'm calling it Canada's Digital Disadvantage. And the problem is that there are so many different constituents and jurisdictions and intergovernmental departments and responsibilities that we don't seem to be able to get our act together. So for instance, we've obviously got Industry Canada, focus on industry, and we have Human Resources and Skill Development Canada, focused on job training. We've got Public Safety, focused on safety. And then we've got the provinces, and each province has their own education department, but they also have their own post-secondary ministry. And on top of that, they have their own departments of jobs and innovation. And So trying to bring all of these together has been impossible. Industry has been reluctant to really get involved, and we know about the problem in terms of productivity, and Professor Leonard Waverman contends in a recent research study that 50% of Canada's productivity lag, it can be attributed to lack of training, digital skills training. And I think that the writing is on the wall, but we ain't doing anything. And basically the problem is every group is saying, well, it's HRSDC's problem, not mine if I'm Industry Canada. It's how do I get the provinces together if I'm the federal government? The provinces said, well, we can't do anything because we don't have the funding and we are individuals. So we're kind of caught here in this mire of finger pointing, and I don't think it's good for us. So what's with Canada? Well, maybe we can talk about that later. But you see, people say, well, what's the problem? We have huge access, and we've got 3 generations of kids who've grown up with the internet and who are digitally literate, right? And education is a province's responsibility, and the kids are obviously all right, but are they? So the question is, well, are the kids all right? I mean, they certainly know how to access the internet. They know how to use technology. They're certainly communicating and creating with technology, but do they really understand the implications? And that's really where my work has been, trying to figure out whether or not we should relax as parents and educators and policymakers and say the kids are going to be okay. Every generation does things that their parents and grandparents recoil from in horror, but so they're going to muddle through. They're smart. They're exposed to all kinds of things, and they're going to be fine. And if you follow the philosophy of Facebook, if we're opening up the world, if everything is transparent anyhow, we're going to be a lot more tolerant. And the old bosses are going to die, and the new bosses are going to be from this generation, and they're not going to pay any attention to the fact that you danced with a pair of underpants on your head at your graduation, and it's not going to interfere with your job. So that's the big debate. And I myself think that it's actually dangerous to mythologize our kids as the digital natives who speak digital as their first language, and they know everything. But we are in a very precarious world where, for the first time, our elders know far less about the technology than the young people who are coming up, and I think that's the big deal. So it's the key to online safety. And it's also the key to economic security, digital literacy. And so that's what our white paper talks about, that there's a connection between our declining performance in the digital economy with our failure to invest in the digital literacy skills that we need. And basically, as I said, it goes beyond far beyond basic computer literacy skills to a whole set of lifelong learning. And the last point that I wanted to make is that for me, the most important area of digital literacy is trying to learn how to walk the balance, defining that fine line between security and protectionism and safety on one hand, and openness, let it all hang out, and transparency on the other. And I think that a digitally literate population, starting with our kids, needs to consider these choices and make them for themselves, rather than having the Googles and the Facebooks of the world pushing us, and we have to figure out how to opt out, rather than we should be opting in at the beginning. So that's my plug. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sinclair. In a minute, I'm going to be opening up the floor for questions from you. We'll have a chance for 3 or 4 questions before we take a break. But I have a question for the panelists and a bit of a challenge. So in relation to the Canadian economic development issue and digital literacy in particular, if you had to pick, and you all spoke about a variety of really important, relevant issues, burning issues, topics, if you had to pick the one thing that was for you at the top of the list, what is the one burning issue that you would select that was going to have the greatest, that the internet is going to, a burning issue for the internet that will have the greatest impact on Canadian economic development or Canadian digital literacy? Which one would you pick? Marc.
You know the answer. IPv6.
I think you explained that really well. Jim.
That's a very, very hard question to answer.
Okay.
The one burning issue, just rephrase the question, though. What is the one
What
burning
is the one
issue?
burning issue in relation to the internet today that you think is likely to have the greatest impact on Canadian economic development and Canadian digital literacy?
Okay, so since we're speaking specifically to the internet, I would say bandwidth and access. And that's two things, but I'm going to combine them together into one. Bandwidth and access.
Yep.
So I'm going to cheat also and give you two things. The first is digital literacy as a bulwark against fear. So, you know, I think one of the things that you hear a lot in the discourse is talking about all the bad things on the internet and giving the people the tools to understand how to navigate the things that they don't like as opposed to just decrying them, I think is critical. I think there's another component to that, which is companies have to give people the control as well to take control over their own digital lives, but understanding those and through digital literacy is critical. That's number one. And number two, I told you I was cheating. Number two is super, super fast open broadband.
Okay. Dr. Sinclair.
I think you heard me.
Okay. So do you want to emphasize one?
Well, I think for Canada, our cross-jurisdictional silos are the biggest impediment in terms of a clear policy. Digital literacy is really important. I think there's a lot of progress that's being made in terms of companies like Google and Microsoft now offering a do not track ability. So I think sort of a digitally literate population can actually put pressure on companies who basically, you know, as Google says, we don't do evil, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. What about you? What questions would you like to ask our panelists at this moment in time? Si vous avez des questions, je vous invite à vous exprimer en français. But Namara, we're bringing you a microphone, sir.
Hi. I'd like to ask you
excuse me,
what
you
you
just identify yourself first, please.
My name's Terry Atkinson, Zybernaut Multimedia. I'd like to ask you about the balkanization of the internet, and this is both for commercialization as well as national security issues. And what I mean by that is you have companies like Facebook that are setting up, walled internet. I think Apple is commercializing a walled internet. You have Egypt having a kill switch. You have China. Google has backed off of internet search in China. The US has talked about having a kill switch. So do you have some views on what that means to a free and public internet?
Who would like to take it?
I'll take a punt at that because I think it's a really insightful question and something that's critical. If you read Jonathan Zittrain's book, The Future of the Internet and How to Stop It, he makes the observation that the generative technologies as represented by the internet versus the walled garden technologies, that the future progress of the open internet is not inevitable. That concerns around security and other things will compel governments to pick the winners. So even if the market wants to pick the open technologies, governments may wind up forcing platforms to be more and more closed. I actually think in this regard, we talked about Facebook a little bit. There's something interesting in the Privacy Commissioner's Facebook decision, which hasn't really gotten much press scrutiny, which is that she held Facebook, the platform, responsible for the behavior of app developers on that platform. So query what that does for openness and innovation. Query what that would have done if Microsoft would have been held accountable for all of the apps developed on Windows 25 years ago, and how that would have affected the trajectory of innovation. So I think that there's definitely a push by regulators and governments who enjoy having one entity to go to hold responsible. So they like gatekeepers as a broad category, and I think that they will push the open players in the open internet to be much more like closed gatekeepers. That's a big risk.
I would like to stay. Well, I'm not going to talk about IPv6. just to my personal opinion is I've lived on the internet for quite a long time back when we connected the university to the internet, my local university in Quebec City. And it was always an open internet, and I really believe that that's the only way we should do it. And I think also from the society point of view that the recent events in the Middle East for a few months now showed that an open internet, or even an half-open internet, actually, do things for the society. So I think we should strongly, all of us, make sure that the internet remains open. And by the technology is IPv6.
Jerry?
I think it's a great question. It also illustrates that fine balance that I've been talking about between security and openness. And personally, I think that the story, the Middle East story, is not really a story about Facebook and how powerful Facebook was in pushing the revolution. Really, the people, 50% of Egypt's population lives on less than $2 a day. So there's only 74% literacy there. So the people who are able to use Facebook are those digitally literate, highly educated young people who actually managed to use Facebook and now are naming their kids after Facebook. But that's another story. I think the real story there is the fact that you can pull the plug on the internet, and that as Egypt is pulling the plug on the internet, China decides to shut down the internet, and you know what's happening in Libya right now, and I think that's the story. The other part of it is when you talk about Apple or even Amazon. I mean, one of my very favorite examples is that one day, about a year and a half ago, everybody who had a certain book on their Kindles woke up to find out the next morning it was gone. And that book happened to be George Orwell's 1984, which is quite ironic. And Amazon found out it didn't really have the rights to it. So you can just go to reach in and pull. And Microsoft couldn't do that, right? Because it didn't have access to all of the machines. Apple, if an app is they don't want the app on your machine, whoosh, it's gone. And so I think that really does tell us about how open and balkanized the internet is.
Thank you. We have a question from the webcast from our online group.
So we have a question here from the online room. This is from Garth Graham for the panel. Can we resolve the data analytics problem by ensuring that I own the online expression of myself? That it's not their data but mine, as a matter of right and IP, that is a user-centric digital identity.
Who would like to take that one?
So again, So the first thing I think is it's a terrific question, and I think that there's a lot of reasons to think that you should be the steward of your own data, and that's exactly what Google's doing in building what we call data liberation into all of our products. It's a riff on for those of you who are Monty Python nerds in the audience, the Judean People's Front. From Life of Brian, we have the Data Liberation Front, which throughout all of our products, we allow you to export your data. So if you lose faith in Google, if you don't like the product, you can fire Google and take all your data out and move to another provider. And we think that that's important for the market to allow people to compete on privacy. And so that's been a critical differentiator that we've had versus other internet companies with whom you cannot get your data, your email, your contacts out once they're in. So you can check in, but you can't check out with some of these other companies. The other point, though, that I want to make is we have to pause when we talk about some of the fear-mongering that goes around data analytics, because the only way we will have more productivity in Canada, the only way we will have better public policy decision-making, the only way we'll have better private decision-making is if we can use data available to us to understand the world around us and to make those better decisions. That's why we collect a public census. I know that's a controversial issue these days, but that's why we do that. That's why companies like Cognos, innovation here in Canada exist to provide business intelligence to companies That's why Watson was such a powerful innovation on Jeopardy. All of these things are trying to take these troves of information that exist in companies and help us humans make useful, good decisions from that data.
Second comment, Jerry.
Well, one of the things that gives me a lot of pleasure is that mathematicians are now rock stars. And we have the new numerati, and I'm certainly not opposed to finding out everything we can and understanding behaviors. I think insight is really important. There, as I said, there's the good and the bad, and we have to figure out the balance. But in terms of digital identity, I can't think of anyone here who would not think that we should be the owner of our own data and our identity. But here's a question for you. Take photos in Facebook. And right now what happens is a friend tags you in a photo, and you find out about it afterwards, right? Okay, so-and-so has tagged you in a photo. Oh my God, what photo? I better go find it. And the onus is on you to find it and untag yourself if you don't like it. But then the question is, if my friend takes a photo of me, do I own the rights to my identity in that photo? Who owns it? And I mean, there are all these areas of question in this world of remix and bits. The ownership is a very complicated thing.
Another question from the floor. Right here.
My name is Ramendra Singh. I'm a financial advisor who uses the internet a lot. Internet actually has almost destroyed my handwriting. I hope I'll be able to read it. My question relates to infrastructure, although there are so many other dimensions mentioned by the panelists, and partly to do with what Martha Morgan from Industry Canada has commented on, that the ICT sector is only 5% of the GDP, yet it drives the other 95%. I'll just go back again to the material provided as background for this conference in terms of the series of meetings and conferences held last year, some of the goals, recommendations, such as Aboriginal access, French language, digital literacy, infrastructure. Jacob Glick has referred to the stovepipe kind of situation that has driven the past in terms of telephone communications and so on. My suggestion is that nothing much has changed, except that we have a couple more stovepipes in terms of Bell plus Shaw plus a couple of others. We are still dealing with a very fast evolving, innovating field in still very traditional ways, where we have CRTC who listens to presentations by Bell and so on, and then they get permission from CRTC, and yet in the background all this stuff is going on that seems to have to be dependent on the infrastructure available to them. So my question is, partly to Marta, is that the government we have today is loath to interfere in anything that affects business profits and so on. Yet, should that continue, should we not have now infrastructure in the hands of non-profit bodies that are in touch with all of these other fantastic innovative bodies that are all over the country, who know what's going on, who know Canada's need to be globally competitive? So should we not really take the infrastructure control out of the hands of a private sector? That's my question. And I hope maybe Marta can respond to it for a minute, and the panelists.
So please.
Come and join us.
Well, we can get you a microphone if you would like to comment. Could we have a microphone here, please?
I guess what I'd say to that is I'd actually quote Gerri, who noted that 95% of Canadians have access to very high quality broadband in Canada, and I guess our view would be that that access has been provided by many years of sustained private sector innovation and investment. So similar to the internet, which has really been driven by the private sector, the broadband availability has been driven by the private sector. I think government's role fundamentally as regulator is to encourage competition, to encourage innovation, but to recognize that the forces of private sector innovation and investment really have provided quite an astonishing service to Canadians, and we really want to make sure that that continues.
Thank you. Does any of your panelists want to comment?
This might be in your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I'll make a comment. Sounds, your question, shall we take the infrastructure out of the hands of the private sector? So my background is in the private sector, and yet I'm currently running a non-governmental, not-for-profit organization. So yeah, let's take the assets from Bell, TELUS, Rogers, and give them to Canary. And Shaw.
Okay.
No, I think in seriousness, I would agree with what Marta has said. I think the government's role is to step in when the market is not delivering the services that we can reasonably expect, or when the services can't be provided in a uniform way across the country. So if we were to find, for example, that we were in a situation where we had excellent broadband connectivity but only in urban centers, then I think there would be a role for government to encourage not-for-profit or non-governmental organizations to provide that kind of connectivity. An example of that might be connectivity to the north. So we have a very sparse population in the north, but it's clearly important to our policy, to our country, and to our culture. So how do we go about providing the kind of connectivity that we enjoy here in Ottawa to our remote northern communities? It's extraordinarily expensive and hard to ask TELUS or Bell or Shaw to go and string fiber up to the north. So that would be an area that I think would be appropriate for the government to say, yes, this is a priority. We would like to see this provided to our northern citizens. It's in line with our key strategies and reflects what we as Canadians want. So let's do that through a non-governmental organization or a not-for-profit. But I think I completely align with what Marta said, that the private sector has done an excellent job and continues to do an excellent job, not flawless, continue to do an excellent job in providing these services.
We'll take one more question before the break. At the back right there.
Thank you. Are we on here?
Yep.
My name is Marita Mall. I'm with a cross-national community group, which has been representing digital, talking about digital skills for many years. I've also worked with MNet, and thank you, Dr. Sinclair. I really did connect with all of your slides. You did hear from us when you were chair of the TPRP, and you did recognize that, for which I thank you. But the key slide that really got me there was the one with all the different factions that are, they're competing in this arena for attention, and how the community groups, it's very difficult for them to get their voice in, practically impossible with no funding, very loosely knit national groups. There is a hope that this particular process might lead to some kind of a resolution of that. I mean, I'm looking at the report on Canadian interest in Internet governance that was from the November 2010 document that was submitted for this particular process, and it says a Canadian Internet Forum should include and engage a broad base of stakeholders, including governments and all of these things. So my question is this where this is going to happen? Is this going to result in some kind of a process where underfunded and marginalized communities that are working on digital literacy skills, particularly in my case, I'm particularly interested in the community access program that the government has had for 10 years, but it's been a huge struggle to keep that. They're delivering digital literacy skills to thousands of people every single day. How do we get into that kind of a discussion, and is this the place where that's going to happen? Thank you.
Well, the point is one that I completely support, and have been so much impressed and blown away by the work that communities do in terms of promoting digital literacy. And I too look with nostalgia upon the good old days of when Industry Canada started the CAP program, and there was a perfect example of the federal government working with the communities to support community access. There's so many programs being driven by communities in terms of helping women in poverty and providing digital skills for groups, but without leadership, it's very, very difficult to bring these groups together. I mean, we're all waiting for the digital literacy messiah to come down and say, "Thou shalt all get your act together and talk, and let's move forward."
So I think that is a very important question. When I compare Canada to other countries, we tend not to provide as much leadership from within our government for issues like this. So as an example of that, we don't have a national science officer in Canada. Not that your question was about science. It's just one of many examples. So one thing that I would encourage all of us to do is, if we think that this would be a benefit to Canada, is to provide pressure to our government to provide more leadership in these areas. And a great example of that leadership is the digital economy strategy. The digital economy strategy is coming. It will eventually be put before us, and we will act according to what it is recommending. But it's a grassroots effort, and I think that's a good thing. But in other jurisdictions, we're seeing leadership provided more from the input from the government, leveraging the input from the government. The other thing that this suggests is that for all of us who see this lack of leadership, is to provide it ourselves. And I think the call is that there are, in every aspect of the internet in Canada, in every aspect of science in Canada, we tend to have less strong leadership than other jurisdictions. And so therefore provides an opportunity and a requirement for those of us who are passionate about bringing about change, are passionate about providing leadership, to step up and do it.
Thank you very much. And what I'd invite all of you is to join me and thank our panelists for the tremendous insight they provided this morning. We know what a talented group you are. Oh, Byron has a point.
In fairness to the panel, hi, my name is Byron Holland, and I'm the president and CEO of Sierra, one of the organizers of this day. And just in fairness to the panel, in answering a question like that, I think the answer to that is, in a sense, yes, that is exactly what we're trying to do here today: is engage the broad conversation and really try to live up to the ideals of the multi-stakeholder governance model that the internet today is primarily governed by. And I think it's also important to notice that one of the groups, one of the entities or stakeholders that has really encouraged us to go forward with this endeavor are the folks at Industry Canada, who have clearly run their own much broader process around all things digital, but were very encouraging of us to really try to focus on what our niche is, which is around the governance of the internet and the multi-stakeholder model and what comes with it, which is in part letting everybody have a voice. So today's the day, and that's exactly the kind of thing we're hoping to get out of it.
Great. And more to come.